Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Infinite Shadow Split. Chapter 41. The flag was lowered, and then a group of soldiers began to raise the flag and the national anthem began to be played on the loudspeakers. The young pioneers salute, and the flag-raising ceremony proceeded slowly. The next thing is to carry the big sun and start to swear, "The sun is scorching, there is a beauty that wants to burn people." Tang Gao was a little dumbfounded, a little confused about this operation. Isn't it, calling us over early in the morning, is to carry this big sun oath? The oath worked very well. Tang Gao no longer wanted to join the military department, and strengthened his determination to path. This is not hypocrisy, it is the cruel reality of Nima's high temperature of about 40 degrees. After the oath was taken, everyone had the illusion that they were going to be burned by the sun. Lu Ren's blood was boiling, his passion was high, his forehead was sweating, and his eyes were shining. I must become a soldier. That's cool. Tang Gao wore earplugs, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Okay, if you like it, I don't want to suffer this kind of suffering. Quote. It can be seen that the same thing has completely different effects in the eyes of different people. Some people like it, some people can't stand it. Tang Gao felt that people who could endure this kind of suffering were really powerful, and he would rather suffer the pain of using his brain and struggle than suffer this kind of suffering, which was not suitable for his own kind of people. On the command platform, General Lu Zhengguo sat down and said with a smile, "Well, knowing that you dolls can't stand the heat, let's let our squad leaders take everyone to visit the base, and when the base is completed, we will play on the whole hour." Tang Gao's face was slightly happy. Very good, now as long as it is not basking in the sun, it is easy to say anything. Most of the students in the team breathed a sigh of relief. They really couldn't bear this torture in hot weather. It's not that I don't like to take an oath, but the fact that the heat is in itself tormenting. Next, everyone began to visit the Liangcheng base, including various firearms, military equipment, monk equipment, training sites, shooting ranges, etc. When visiting the shooting range, the soldier squad leaders also enthusiastically let those who were willing to shoot guns take pistols, rifles, etc. and hit 2 shuttles, which excited the classmates and screamed, and once again ignited the dream of becoming a soldier. Guns are forbidden in the people, but there are no in the base. As long as there are people to take care of them, shooting guns is completely permitted. Lu Ren was so excited that the orangutan screamed, turned into a fanatic fan, wearing a cultivator armor suit and wielding a standard magic weapon in the playground and screaming. The unexpected effect was good, looking very handsome, causing a group of classmates to desperately beg the soldier squad leader, and also wanted the same battle armor suit. The tour is not over yet, but many people have found what they like, and one by one they have gathered together to fully feel the beauty of this base. Tang Gao was a little curious, but not much, and he didn't like to get close to this kind of liveliness, just looked at them enviously. I envy them for having so much enthusiasm, but they just want to be slackers. Tang Gao couldn't help but sigh. It's good to be young. Teacher Tian Cheng came over and said with a smile, "Why, you are not old, what are you doing here?" Tang Gao was slightly stunned, thinking back to what went wrong, and when did he have a faint sense of difference with his classmates? Probably, because there are too many reincarnations, the mentality has changed. Teacher Tian Cheng saw him thoughtfully, his hands behind his back, and his eyes were bright. I have also been on the battlefield, and I have also killed people, but it doesn't mean that I can't get along with you. Teacher Tian Cheng was halfway through speaking, suddenly stunned, and recalled, I've been too tired recently. Quote. It took me a long time to recover when I came back from the battlefield. After all, Tang Gao was still a child, how could he recover so quickly? Tang Gao nodded. Yes, I'm a little tired. Quote. 5 days ago, I was just an ordinary person, an excellent literary student, relying on my diligence and seriousness, worrying about my future life, trying to use the opportunities I had in my hands to live my life as well as possible. Now, 5 days later, he has experienced many reincarnations, killed many evil people, tried to take down the huge strong dragon group in Liangcheng, and contributed his strength to peace. To be honest, not getting tired is fake. But fortunately, the harvest was very rich and gave me a lot of comfort. Teacher Tian Cheng sighed. Misfortune and fortune depend on each other. This action of yours stimulates your awakening, but it also puts you under stress. I understand, even very well understand your feelings. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Though, you have a good rest on the weekend, and I grant you permission not to do your homework. Tang Gao cried and laughed. Homework still has to be done, I have to study for myself. Teacher. Tian Cheng was speechless for a moment, and added, don't worry, your parents are protecting you and supporting you, and the teachers are also protecting you and supporting you. You are not without anything, you still have your family, you still have teachers. By the way, you still have that loud tablemate, and I hereby allow you to hang out with him more on weekends and stay at home less. Tang Gao smiled. Well, I'll go out with him on the weekend to change my mood, thank you teacher for your concern. Teacher Tian Cheng said with a smile. Child, there is pressure in this world, but don't forget to be busy and make yourself happy. Tang Gao nodded. Understand, to create happiness. Teacher Tian Cheng smiled and lowered his voice. Later, our martial arts students will train against the soldiers in the base, and when the time comes, I will arrange for you to go up in the first wave and show off well. Tang Gao was speechless for a while, looking at the old urchin. Do you have to let me go up and pretend? Quote. 1 second he said let me rest, and the next second he arranged for me to go to sparring. Teacher Tian Cheng shook his head. You kid, haven't you practiced hard for so long just to pretend? What is the difference between people and pigs if they are not visible? Besides, I haven't treated you well in recent years. I think you met back then. Tang Gao had a headache, interrupted the chant of the head teacher. I taught you with tears and sweat back then, and hurriedly waved his hand. Stop and stop, I'll go. Teacher. Tian Cheng hates iron but not steel. You give me a point of contention, I have worked hard for 3 years, so that I can see some results. It gives me a sense of accomplishment. Tang Gao was speechless. Why don't you let others go up? Teacher Tian Cheng rolled his eyes and turned his back on his hand. They are all student babies, they have not even experienced social sinisters, let alone murder, let them go up, it is really to feel it, and then lose silky. But I have a good face, in the past few years, I have always lost, and no one can win. I know the reality is here, but I just want to win once, you know. 3 years and 3 years, do you kid know how I got over? The tree lives a piece, the person lives a breath, what is wrong with you giving me some fight? Tang Gao understood, because the head teacher had been frustrated for many years, although he knew that it was a reality, he still had a little bump about it, hoping that he could play and give him a long face. Tang Gao sighed and rolled up his sleeves. Okay, for the sake of these 3 years of kindness, leave it to me, and I will give you a long face. Teacher. Tian Cheng nodded in satisfaction and patted him on the shoulder. That's right, by the way, be ruthless when you start, use killing techniques, hit into serious injuries, and there is no problem at all in dying. As long as it is not killed on the spot, the military doctors in the base can be rescued. Tang Gao gasped. Didn't you say that it wasn't my life danger and special circumstances that didn't let me use murderous techniques? Teacher. Tian Cheng shrugged. This is an exception, because as long as there is one breath left here, you can save it, and the one who loses can only be considered unlucky. This is a barracks, the strong are respected, no one will say anything about you, only that the people who lose are not as skilled as others. Tang Gao was speechless. How much resentment you have about losing the sparring practice, and you can say such cruel words. Teacher Tian Cheng skimmed his head slightly. I definitely don't have the idea of selfish revenge, I just want to win once. When you say this, can you turn to look me in the eye and say? Tang Gao rolled his eyes. It was true that he won once, and it was also true that the teacher took the opportunity to take revenge on himself. I can only believe half of this. You can win, but there is no need to beat the other side into a dying life. Chapter 42. When the magic cultivators in the base began to release the water mist above to block the sun, the time had already come to 10 o'clock. One after another, the water system spells formed dark clouds of moderate thickness, isolating the high temperature, and one by one the military system cultivators formed formations to provide a guarantee for the next sparring activities. Everyone was also shouted to the playground, the podium was expanded, many tables and chairs were placed, and the military commanders and school leaders sat together and laughed and communicated. Tang Gao looked curiously at the dark clouds floating overhead. Why is there a lot of healing energy in these dark clouds? Lu Ren was sweating profusely, wiped the beads of sweat with a tissue, and explained casually, in order to treat, as long as someone's life is in danger, these spells can save life at any time and provide treatment time for military doctors. Tang Gao's eyes widened slightly. Is the sparring practice here really life-threatening? Quote. I'll go. What teacher Tian Chang said is true. Lu Ren threw the sweaty tissue into the transparent garbage bag carried by a classmate on the side, smiled at him to express his gratitude, and then explained to Tang Gao. That's right, there are still death indicators every year. But don't worry, the current spell development has been perfected. As long as it is not an instant death, it is safe under the shadow of healing spells. Tang Gao felt that he had seen a long time. The students were arranged under the eastern woods on the edge of the playground, while the military cultivators stood in a military formation on the west side, standing with a solemn face, exuding a solemn aura. Tang Gao looked at the military formation on the opposite side, smacked his tongue, and changed his view of the set of oaths. If it were not strictly regulated, I am afraid that such a neat and majestic military contingent full of strength would not be able to be cultivated. On the command platform, General Lu sat on the chair, clapped his hands with a smile, and the sound spread throughout the audience, suppressing all the noise, and a faint coercion spread, reminding everyone that it was quiet. Everyone obediently quieted down and looked at General Lu. General Lu stood up, smiled and saluted. His face was slightly slower, and his tone was gentle. It seems that everyone has a good time. Then it will be the annual sparring exercise. The purpose of this sparring training is very simple, that is, let everyone feel the benefits of military training. I am a military barbarian, do things directly, and then I will select some people to practice against each other, let everyone feel it first, and then launch a comprehensive sparring activity. For interested students, you can also contact our instructors after the training. We have internal recruitment indicators for locals every year. As long as the test is passed, without the college entrance examination, you can directly enter the academy of our base military department for training. After saying these words, General Lu paused, waited for everyone to digest it a little, and then smiled and clapped his hands. Okay, everyone starts to prepare for sparring practice. The list that had been drawn up a long time ago was handed over to General Lu. General Lu picked up the list, shouted the name aloud, and at the same time looked at the people who came out of the column with his eyes, and an invisible consciousness swept over the other party, probing the details of the other party to see if there were any good seedlings. Of course, it is also an additional insurance to detect some people who should not appear, and then he personally thunders to suppress it. Sixth order cultivators, the ability to move mountains and reclaim the sea, is not casual. Tang Gao swallowed his saliva and hurriedly suppressed the attribute breath, so as not to probe his bottom out when he got it. A person was called out of the queue and stood on the training field that was simply carved out. Soon, it was Tang Gao's place. Don Gao. Tang Gao stood up and walked out of the column. His eyes were steady, and he couldn't help but turn over the river and sea in his heart, and repeatedly confirmed that he had suppressed the shadow attribute, suppressed the breath of the upper attribute of the battle chi system, and disguised himself as a lower attribute. General Lu looked at Tang Gao. His originally smiling face was slightly moved, his eyes changed slightly, and he couldn't help but sigh. Good boy. Quote. At such a young age, there is such a heavy murderous aura. No matter how rich it is, it can be murderous and visible. Deliberately hiding attributes. It should be the upper attribute of the battle chi system. It's just that this smells a little familiar. Well, the Xuanjian exercises of the department to which the junior brother belongs. General Lu looked at Lu Ren next to Tang Gao's seat again, looked at the other party's immature and somewhat familiar face, smiled faintly, and withdrew his gaze. It seems that it is the person recruited by the junior brother under the blood, and this kid will not tell me when he digs up good seedlings, and he has to scold him when he turns back. General Lu thought that the other party was a junior disciple, and with a smile on his face, he beckoned. You go to the number 1 martial arts training ground, boy, you are the one who is marked by the respect point of Master Tian. Tian Chang, who was sitting on the side, laughed. You boy, should you call me this now? General Lu turned his head. His face was respectful, and he saluted slightly. One day for the master and the father for life. If it were not for the master to guide me to enter the door and break through and change the trajectory of my life, I am afraid that I would still be a street bastard now. Teacher Tian Chang smiled and did not smile. So this is the reason why you focus on taking care of my students. Quote. Number 1 martial arts training ground, you can get your hands off. General Lu withdrew his gaze with a slight weakness. This is a good seedling, you have to take good care of it. Well, Zhang Chang. Quote. The number 1 martial arts training ground, this is not only a special honor, but also a reminder that this is a good seedling, and strive to grab it. As for whether it can be grabbed, it is another matter. Anyway, this is a junior brother's person, and it is also very good to fish in the same department when the time comes. Tang Gao walked to the number 1 martial arts training ground with a stunned expression, and looked at teacher Tian Chang, who was laughing with General Lu on the command platform in the distance, and was very surprised. Teacher Tian Chang is actually General Lu's master. "I'll go, old urchin, is the gold content of this gold medal teacher of yours so fierce?" The number 1 martial arts training ground is a high-spirited, shield-wielding shield cultivator, and the other party looks like a young man in his 20s, with excellent physical condition, very developed muscles, and a standard standing posture. Seeing Tang Gao's stunned face, Dun Shu explained with a smile, "Back then, General Lu was a street gangster, and it was teacher Tian Cheng who felt sorry for him and taught him knowledge and cultivation in his spare time. When the war broke out later, Mr. Tian Cheng and General Lu went into battle together, and General Lu also rose in that war and became a genius of the military department. It can be said that it was teacher Tian Cheng who changed General Lu's life and put him on a completely different path. If there is no teacher Tian Cheng, I am afraid that there will be no General Lu, but a Lu bastard." Tang Gao smacked his lips, once enlightened to become a cultivator. Quote, "Is this genius, learn to learn, once the epiphany became it, and then bloomed in the war, becoming an extremely young powerhouse." Dun Shu shrugged. "Ask the people at the base about this matter, everyone knows about it. So, when I practice later, I will give you more face." Don. Gao. Tang Gao was a little upset. "What do you mean to save some face?" Quote, "I still use you to give my face." Shield Shu smiled. Hee. First order mid-stage shield cultivation, upper soil attribute steel system, proficient in first order top grade level 10 defense skills. Little one, I'm not belittling you, just hit it with all your strength later, and I'll give you a score based on your performance. Tang Gao retracted his contempt and looked at the other party seriously. Indeed, the upper soil attribute steel system is also proficient in the defense technique of the first order upper grade level 10, plus it is a shield cultivation, plus the cultivation of the middle of the first order. It takes at least 10 years of hard practice to achieve such achievements. Indeed, the other party has this qualification dog barking. However, this is not a reason for you to look down on me. You can point at me, but you can't. Tang Gao smiled and was ready to give the other party a hard blow, with all your strength. I'm afraid I'll punch you to death. Done. Shu raised his eyebrows. Just you? Tang Gao gasped. Is mouth a compulsory course for your shield training? Done. Shu suddenly apologized. I'm sorry, I'm used to ridiculing, I'm not looking down on you, I just think you can't hurt me. Tang. Gao's forehead jumped, his fists clenched, and the fighting chi in his body was raging. I'll shoot lightly later, I'm afraid that I will kill you with one punch. Done. Shu smiled kindly. Hee. Tang. Gao's fire was big, his eyes flashed with surging battle intent, and he charged and shook his fist. Death. The referee on the side was speechless, and did not want to blame the young man for not being able to stop the fire, so he could only hurriedly add, start. Quote. This kid's mouth and his shield are really a perfect match, and they are hot for anyone. Chapter 43. Tang Gao wrapped his fist with battle chi, directly activated the equipment skills and attack skills mastered by the Violent Justice Messenger, and the effect of the 3 evolutions was also contained in it. Attack penetration, attack, speed. Xuanjian upper grade battle chi system exercises, double blessing. 105% increase effect. Shock. This is killing thousands of times, and the combat skills mastered can effectively numb the opponent's chi and blood, so that the other party will enter a paralyzed state in a short time. At first, shield cultivation was a little contemptuous. Children, no matter how good they can be, they just have a promising future. Now, isn't it now? When the other party charged, Dun Shu felt that something was not good, his playful smile converged, his eyebrows were stabbed by the surging battle intent, and he couldn't help but set up a defense. When the other party was halfway through the charge, Dun Shu swallowed his saliva, feeling that he shouldn't have been cheap just now, and the other party seemed to have superior attributes just like himself. When the other party punched the shield repair had no time to regret, the shield exploded instantly, the whole person flew out directly upside down, smashed fiercely on the ground, his arms trembled and paralyzed, and the whole person lay on the ground with a confused face. Who am I? Where am I? Why am I lying down? Shield Shu slowed down, stood up, looked at the broken version of the battlefield shield holding only the handle in his hand, and the pig-killing cry sounded, I dropped the shield. Quote. The shield is the lifeblood of shield repair. It's worse than Gaga. Shield Shu cried with the broken shield fragments. Tang Gao stood in place, his right fist dripping blood, and his face was speechless. This is broken. The referee on the side shrugged. He was careless, he didn't have time to use the most proud defensive technique to reduce the impact. This shield can be used well with the defensive skill, otherwise in order to protect the user, the shield will break first. Tang Gao understood. This shield cultivator carelessly lost his shield, flicked the blood on his hand, and looked at the referee on the side. Come for a treatment. The referee waved his hand, and a stream of water in midair gushed down, wrapping Tang Gao's fist and healing his injuries. The referee sighed twice. Congratulations to Tang Gao for winning. After he finished shouting, he whispered, Xuanjian exercises. Tang Gao nodded silently and admitted the matter. You can show your excellence little by little to get excellent support. The referee looked at him enviously and said no more. Xuanjian exercises, then it is not strange. It all happened so fast that everyone didn't react yet. In the blink of an eye, before the others had time to practice, the #1 martial arts training ground could not wait to start, killing at the speed of light, and beating that shield repair like killing a pig. On the command platform, General Liu had not yet put down the list in his hand, and his face was stunned. This wins. Quote. Cultivation in the middle of the first order. 18. Did you start cultivating in your mother's womb? This shocking word trick, you used it like this. Teacher Tian Cheng also stood up with a stunned expression. Win. Quote. It's like a dream, winning in the blink of an eye, and you haven't had time to adapt. When did you become so strong? When did the cultivation of the middle of the first order begin? Why don't I even know? The military chiefs on the command platform couldn't sit still, and one by one stood up and ran their mana to watch the #1 martial arts training ground, and smacked their tongues. This kid is really bold and careful, and he doesn't use weapons, and he raps his fist with battle chi and smashes it like this. If the control is not strong and the quality of mana is not high, I am afraid that the hand will be broken just now. It's not an ordinary person. The average student's hand is so smashed, he has to cry for half a day on the spot. It's special steel, it's not cotton. At least he can't run away with severe pain in his fist. Maybe the bones have to be broken. This toughness is very strong. Being able to cultivate the Xuanjian exercises to this step, the IQ must be very good, and the results of the literary test must be excellent, otherwise you can't understand the principle inside. This is an extremely good seedling. The eyes of the officers lit up, and one by one they couldn't wait to go down to solicit now. There was a commotion on the side of the military formation, and the soldiers looked at the #1 training ground in surprise. This is losing. That kid is a steel system, even if he doesn't use much battle chi, his own foundation is placed here, and the shield is broken. Ma. Terrifying, the breath of the middle of the first order, this kid's strength is really strong. People lose better than people. Although many people's cultivation is not as strong as this child, everyone is older than him. Thinking about it this way makes it even more heart-wrenching. The reaction from the students' side was more intense. The elite class was directly dumbfounded. All go. Brother Tang is so handsome. One punch and fly. After the fist was injured so badly, he actually talked and laughed without changing his face. Abominable. Fanned by Brother Tang. So, when did Brother Tang secretly cultivate? Mid-first order. Not in the late stage. They are all very awesome results. Brother Tang is actually a first order mid-stage. The students were dumbfounded, and they couldn't imagine that Tang Gao, who was diligent and hardworking on weekdays, actually had such a strong side. On the command platform, the principal looked surprised. He is a mid-first order one. Lao Tian, the surprise you prepared for me is really too big. Teacher Tian Cheng looked surprised. I'm also surprised. He hasn't shown it before, and he hasn't said it when he was testing martial arts before. This is waiting for the college entrance examination, ready to make a blockbuster. A brilliant light flashed in General Liu's eyes and asked, how is his family? Teacher Tian Cheng advised, my parents are ordinary people, and their families are not rich. I'm afraid that the exercises he practiced were still passed down by your junior brother. General Liu showed a look of praise on his face. This son has an extraordinary heart, and he must be recruited into the military department in the future. Quote. On the command platform, commanders, you look at me, I look at you, the eyes are fiercely contacted, they are all deeply impressed by Tang Gao, and they know that in the future, this son will definitely belong to the Liangcheng military system. General Liu stood up, took the lead in applauding, and smiled widely. Congratulations to Tang Gao for winning the first place, but such a simple test, I'm afraid it can't show your strength, so, Lao Guan, you arrange another person to the #1 martial arts training ground. By the way, I reimbursed the loss of that shield repair. A general hurriedly stood up. Obey. General. Guan Zan glared at his subordinates and signaled for him to hurry up and arrange the right candidate. Soon, a first-order late-stage sword cultivator with a special long sword in his hand came to the #1 martial arts training ground. The sword cultivator held the sword and smiled. I am a little cheaper than you in cultivation, and you are stronger in terms of exercises, but don't be careless, I have won the second-class merit and the first prize. Tang Gao smacked his lips. Does it have to be comparable? I have clearly won. Jian Shu was stunned and looked at the referee. This was the first time he had encountered this situation. The referee looked at him speechlessly. Why aren't you motivated? Over there, General Liu is watching the battle. If you perform well, you can be directly escorted without going to the college entrance examination. Shanzhou's institutions of higher learning, you can go to that one if you want. Tang Gao's eyes lit up. Escort. Quote. As soon as you say this, I'm not sleepy. Tang Gao felt his spirits lifted, his chi was high, he was ready to fight, and before fighting, he asked the referee, how good is it to get this reward? The referee hesitated for a moment and added, the stronger the better. Quote. For good seedlings, Lu Da will never skimp on rewards. But the specific standard, this cannot be said. Tang Gao counted and smiled brightly, then I'll take you for a second. Jian Shu cried and laughed, and stood up with his sword, second me. Do you want to choose a weapon? Tang Gao shook his head. No need, against you, you can't use weapons. Quote. Killing thousands of people, I have long seen the sinister size, and the fist is the ultimate weapon. Jian Shu was not reluctant, adjusted his state, and his eyes were sharp. Come on, you attack first. Tang Gao's face was serious, the momentum on his body exploded into 3%, and in an instant, a terrifying suffocating coercion emerged, and the invisible aura that made the heart stop was like the hand of death, pinching the necks of everyone nearby. The referee's pupils shrank sharply, his body burst out of mana, and he hurriedly retreated, and he didn't even have time to shout start, and he withdrew a step away, and cold sweat already broke out on his forehead. What a monster is this? Jian Shu's sharp pupils were shocked, and the sword weapon in his hand burst out with a rhino aura before he could hold his heart, and he was shocked. I'm Nima. Quote. I shouldn't have let him attack first. Swoosh. The terrifying speed erupted, Jian Shu's pupils shrank sharply, only to see an afterimage strike. The wind hit the face, and the tear ducts couldn't help but spew out tears, blurring the world in front of them. Lean. Jian Shu's body was tense, and he pierced straight ahead to force back the attack, but he didn't expect that in front of him, the long sword pierced the air, and the sword chi pierced the ground, piercing out a small and deep hole. Jian Shu only felt a chill in his heart, and looked at Tang Gao standing on the left speechlessly. You. What a speed, what a vicious trick. Quote. It's two killing tricks together. First use the first killing move to storm. If the other party can't react, I'm afraid that the throat will be smashed on the spot. If the other party can react, the first move to fight the wind is enough to make the opponent's vision form a focus, tense the nerves and fiercely guard. Vision. Once there is focus, there will be blind spots. This is also called non-attention blindness. When people focus on one of the focal points, the rest of the attention will be much weaker, will form a blind spot. At this time, if the person is right-handed, then the left side is naturally weaker and the blind zone will be increased. The second killing move, from the blind zone, specializes in the heart, kills with one blow, and is extremely vicious. If you want to crack this killing move, it is also very simple, as long as you can cultivate the 5 senses to the extreme and reach the point of integration. Well, this is at least an ability that only third-order sword cultivators can master. This is a yang murder move, unless you react more than the opponent, or master the counterattack technique of the target, you will not win the opponent. Jian Shu's face twitched, and he couldn't help but ask, how many people did you kill to learn this trick? Quote, this kind of thing can't be taught in school. If you don't kill a few people, you won't learn this terrifying killing trick at all. Depend on. This is still the case of me holding a sword. If I don't have a sword, I am afraid that I will die in the first move. Tang Gao closed his hand and shrugged. It's not difficult, you will practice more. Jian Shu looked at him extremely speechlessly. His lips moved slightly to say something, and in the end he could only swallow the words. Maid, I also killed people, why didn't I learn your trick? Is this a matter of practice? Without thousands of tempered life and death experience, can there be this technique? The referee raised his sleeve and wiped the sweat on his forehead, and announced with difficulty, 8th middle school and high school 3rd elite class, Tang Gaosheng. Quote, sword cultivation loses quickly, not in cultivation, but in the absence of Tang Gao. Even if it is the same cultivation, the same conditions, in terms of mentality, Tang Gao is superior, so the killing move is so drastic. Sword repair, undefeated, defeated. Chapter 44. This time, General Liu and other bigwigs on the command platform could see clearly, especially next to them, and they knew very well how Jian Shu lost. General Liu was extremely surprised. I didn't see blood until I was 20 years old, and this kid saw blood earlier than me. Quote, no wonder the teacher wants to focus on cultivating this person. In the era of relative peace, such talents are indeed rare. As long as there is no problem with the mind, it will definitely become a great talent in the future. The momentum that erupted just now can only be possessed if you have really fought. Teacher Tian Cheng looked more carefully and frowned. This kid is actually not at full strength. General Liu nodded approvingly on the side. Yes, not full strength, more than enough. The principal's face was full of curiosity, and he sat firmly on the chair, then bothered General Liu to arrange another one. Look at how thick this little guy's foundation is, even weapons are useless, and he won the battle like this, it's really not a look. General Liu smiled and waved. Okay, Lao Guan, you go and arrange another one. The Guanzhong general ordered him to get up and look at the subordinates on the side, signaling him to find someone with rich fighting experience, otherwise under the same rank, how could ordinary cultivators beat such people? On the side of the military cultivators, everyone brushed dumbfounded, never expecting that the old sword would also be folded when it went up. Obedient, this little young man is not an ordinary person, the set of killing moves just now is simply wonderful. Kill with empty hands, be very bold, and be very confident in your skills. It's a textbook attack, and it should be recorded and taken a good look. Makes sense, Captain, apply for recording. The captains in front glanced at each other, made reports one after another, and quickly got the recording equipment, intending to record this genius's combat style and go back to review it well. The senior student group was already dumbfounded. I dropped the sky, when did Brother Tang secretly carry us behind our backs to fight? I'm afraid he found a hay to help practice, just so fierce momentum, I was scared that my pants were almost wet. Quote. Hey, Lu Ren, isn't your dad working in the Guardian Bureau? Shouldn't he be following your dad to chase and kill the murderer in private? Lu Ren looked confused. I don't make it. Quote, the same are all people, why are you doing so well, Brother Tang? I also practice Xuanjian exercises. There are basically few people on the students' side who can understand it, but they roughly know that Tang Gao is very powerful, the shot is a second kill, the momentum is very fierce, standing here exudes the breath of a mature adult, and these people who are still very immature are completely different. The teachers were surprised to see it, and they couldn't imagine that Tang Gao, an excellent student in the literary test who looked like a well-behaved man on weekdays, would actually show such a fierce side. It's really unseemly. After 3 years of getting along, I didn't find that this little guy has such a strong side. 3 years, 3 whole years did not show his talent, only revealed on the eve of the college entrance examination. This kid's city government is really deep. It can be moderately understood. After all, it is an ordinary family, and it is normal to have this situation. The sparring activities that were supposed to be carried out normally, because of this special event, were temporarily delayed, and everyone was observing the situation on the #1 martial arts training ground. This time, the one who came on the scene was a middle-aged man wearing an instructor's uniform, holding a dagger in his hand, with a national character face, solid muscles, and his clothes were all stretched tightly. The instructor flicked the dagger between his fingers, showed his technique a little, and smiled unconsciously with a scrutinizing gaze. I should have found a first-order perfect person to train with you, but because the right person went out to perform the task, I, the instructor in the middle of the second order, will do it for me. You have to be careful. I'm going out to fight people, monsters, and people who have killed you, and your set may not be useful to me. Tang Gao looked hesitant, thinking about what kind of tactics he should use to fight it. Seeing his expression, the instructor smiled faintly. You can choose a weapon, so as not to lose the ability to fight later. Tang Gao thought for a while, took off the special earbuds, moved his neck, mobilized his 5 senses, and showed a serious face. Then I will be serious and use the 5 senses as a weapon. It's a bit of a stretch to deal with you without weapons, but I hope to be able to find my limits. The instructor looked at the earbuds he took off, slightly stunned, a little surprised, but did not say much. Okay, then it depends on you. Quote. The middle of the first order and the middle of the second order, a whole large gap, although there are Zon order exercises to close the gap, but the gap in cultivation is huge, and the rest can only be made up by technology. Tang Gao looked at the instructor seriously, took a murderous pose, 1 foot in front and 1 foot behind, the toes stood up slightly, and his body exuded a terrifying aura, his eyes flashed coldly, staring at the instructor's death hole. The instructor's face gradually became serious, realizing that the little guy in front of him was even more terrifying than he expected, did not dare to be distracted, stared at the enemy in front of him with all his heart, took out his most comprehensive state, and even secretly used the strengthening spell. The referee did not dare to speak, silently retreated, and signaled the two to decide when to make a move. In this case, if you make a rash noise, it is a disturbing. Tang Gao squinted and temporarily took an evolutionary strip for himself. Speed Evolution Article, First Order, Level 1, 0%. At present, his own cultivation is in the late stage of the First Order, and the gains of the Violent Justice Messenger hanging up are actually quite a lot. But they are not as much as they personally perform the task. Their own advantage is that they have rich experience in fighting, but they lack certain explosive means, which is a shortcoming. Then, rely on pure technology to compensate. Seriously mobilize everything you have. Use the opportunities you have to play the most perfect operation. Tang Gao took the lead in moving, his eyes instantly sharpened, there was only one instructor in his eyes. His steps rushed straight down, exerting his speed to the extreme, his fists were ready to strike, ready to give the other party a fatal blow, leaving an afterimage behind him. The instructor's pupils shrank sharply. What a speed! Quote. Much faster than a normal first-order cultivator. Those in the early stage of the second order may not be able to have such speed. Tang Gao charged halfway, and the two were only 3 steps away. The instructor's body instantly aroused a terrifying murderous aura. His eyes were like swords, terrifying, and the dagger in his hand cut through the sky, directly stabbing at Tang Gao's chest. You are too careless. Quote. Facing a cultivator 1 rank higher than yourself, you actually dare to charge like this. Tang Gao did not hesitate, directly waved his hand and slammed into the dagger, and the left hand hidden in his waist stabbed out like a ghost, and his fingertips pierced the opponent's chest. Cultivators of the upper battle chi attribute of the late first order generally possessed excellent physical fitness. Second order cultivators are very strong in cultivation, but their skin defense is not strong enough to ignore the attacks of first order late stage upper battle chi attribute cultivators. The instructor's dagger stabbed solidly, blood flew everywhere, angry eyes, couldn't help but scold, directly gave up the dagger and raised the next door to resist Tang Gao's finger thorn. Eileen. After all, it was in a hurry, the instructor's arm was paralyzed, his face changed drastically, and his heart was shocked, knowing that he was finished. The opposite side is proficient in acupuncture points. With a smug smile on his face, Tang Gao used the dagger pierced in the palm of his right hand as a weapon, and took advantage of the other party's brief paralyzing moment to plunge fiercely into the chest of the instructor. Of course, I left my hand and didn't prick my heart. Blood flew everywhere, and a blood flower bloomed in his chest. The instructor looked at Tang Gao with a shocked face. Where did you learn this kind of thing? Quote. Is this homicide? This is deathmatch. Use all the conditions possible to achieve the martial arts of killing the opponent. Tang Gao raised his right hand, and another blood flower bloomed, making the instructor's face turn slightly pale with pain. Tang Gao calmly pulled out the dagger from his palm. Just say that I won. The instructor covered the wound on his chest and looked at the 18-year-old child in front of him with a complicated expression. You won. Quote. The other party naturally left his hand, otherwise he should be pierced in the heart now. What kind of monster is this? Chapter 45. The water flow of healing wrapped around Tang Gao's palm, and his eyes calmly watched the wound heal. There was silence. The referee who stood close looked stunned and looked at Tang Gao blankly, not expecting to see such a ruthless person in a group of students. You all have Zon step exercises, and you can become a strong person with normal cultivation. Why did it cost so much to master this deathmatch? Tang Gao saw that the wound was healed, and a look of envy appeared in his eyes, thinking that if he had the opportunity in the future, he must be the whole nanny. Don't look over his head and see the referee still standing dumbfounded, reminding, announce quickly, I won. After the referee was stunned, he returned to his senses, hurriedly performed the amplification technique, and shouted, Liangcheng number 8 middle school and high school 3rd year elite first class, the strongest in martial arts, Tang Gao, big victory. The instructor sighed slightly and took his dagger from Tang Gao's hand. I was careless, I didn't expect you to use this method at all. Quote. I was wrong in 3 ways. First, they mistakenly believe that the other party has not mastered acupuncture points, resulting in their own missing fighters. Second, they mistakenly think that the other party is not ruthless enough for themselves, and they dare to fight to this step. Third, the instructor raised his eyebrows. Late first order. Quote. If your perception is not wrong, the other party is a cultivator of the late first order, and before the battle, there is still a little strength hidden. I just don't know if the other party is hiding more. If it hides more, it is a pure monster. Tang Gao shrugged. Yes. The instructor threw in the towel. I admit defeat. Lose in your hands, admit the plant. The instructor turned away helplessly, just took 2 steps, suddenly thought of something, turned his head and asked, what is the technique you are most proud of? Tang Gao thought for a while. Dao technique, assassination, fire coverage. What's wrong? The corner of the instructor's mouth twitched. The technique you used to win against me is not your proud combat technique. Tang Gao shrugged. The main thing is that you can't kill people, understand? Quote. If you can live 1 more second in front of me without limiting killing, it will be considered an insult to my technology. The instructor did not want to know what the other party's proud combat skills were, and could only scold with emotion, lean, monster. Then, turning away, not wanting to look at him again, Tang Gao moved his palm, and after confirming that there was nothing wrong, he looked at the command platform and waved at Teacher Tian Chang. Teacher, I'm the first place. Quote. At the beginning of the first order, it was already a very good result in the college entrance examination. In the middle of the first order, this is almost a rare achievement for geniuses. In the late stage of the first order, this is a super genius achievement that breaks common sense. Mastering and using Zon level exercises, even if they are low level, is already a super high threshold beyond many cultivators. You know, even if you put the Xuanjian exercises in front of you, many cultivators can't master them for a lifetime, and they can only give up with hatred. This requires a relatively high IQ and literary test score. Perfect martial arts level, extreme killing techniques that go further than perfect martial arts, and deathmatch techniques that are more terrifying than extreme killing techniques. Even more outrageous than deathmatch, he successfully killed a powerful instructor of the military system in the middle of the second order at the level of the late first order period. How can the instructor who can come to the number 1 martial arts training ground be a general, naturally a well-selected and well-known powerhouse? On the command platform, General Liu looked at the young man on the number 1 martial arts training ground in shock, and couldn't help but stand up and applaud first. Good. 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 Very good. Very good. Quote. Strong. Well-deservedly strong. Without superhuman heart, how could this be done? This is the most extreme pursuit of cultivation. Demand the highest specifications for themselves. In other words, if you are an ordinary genius, you can be proud of your mastery of the Xuanjian exercises and stand proudly among the heroes. But Tang Gao, after mastering the Xuanjian exercises, not only did he not give up progress, but he also cultivated himself to the extreme, using every inch of his body to the extreme, achieving extremely difficult achievements that the vast majority of cultivators could not do. Teacher Tian Chang was dumbfounded. When did he do so many things behind my back? Quote, how much suffering did this kid endure to cultivate himself to this point? The principal couldn't sit still, stood up and laughed. Heroes are teenagers, this year our Liangchang will definitely shine because of this teenager. Come over and ask him what he wants. Quote, the commanders on the command platform were full of envy and jealousy, and their back teeth were crushed. Such an excellent talent will definitely not fall into his own hands, and then he can only become the connections of General Lu's lineage. General Lu looked overjoyed, laughed, and hurriedly waved his hand. Please come to me. Guan Zan personally came down the field, drove the wind to the front of the No. 1 martial arts training ground, smiled kindly, and stretched out his hand. Come, stand here, I'll take you to the command platform. Tang Gao looked stunned and pointed to his nose. Let me pass. Quote, isn't it? What did I do? Just let me pass. I didn't even take out my full strength, I didn't even take the knife. What is there to be shocked in the late second order of seconds? Is it hard to do something so simple? Tang Gao was confused, and was taken to the command platform by the Guanzhong general, and fell. General Lu left his seat, walked over with a smile, and grabbed Tang Gao's hand. Good boy, you won the first place in the sparring practice in a string of threes, what do you want? Tang Gao was grabbed by a high-level cultivator, and his body was unconsciously a little tense, but his mentality was still very correct, and he hurriedly waved his hand. No need, the practice activity is not over yet, maybe there are others, there are still quite a few genius cultivators in our 8th middle school. General Lu was crying and laughing. Do you think that among those more than 100 doll cultivators, there is still a second person who killed the special cultivator instructor in the middle of the second order of our base? Quote, the one you killed is not a big cabbage, it is a special cultivator instructor in our base, a special instructor who teaches classes to first to third order cultivators. Tang Gao's face was slightly puzzled. Is he strong? I haven't used a knife yet. Quote, it's a little difficult, but this difficulty is not great, at most the palm is injured, you can take it. If I had taken the knife myself, he wouldn't even have the qualifications to hurt me. General Lu's eyes changed slightly, grabbed Tang Gao's right hand, and looked at the mouth of the tiger, with a knife. You use a knife, how many steps can you kill? Tang Gao scratched his head, his heart was alarmed, once again confirmed that his attributes were covered, and said calmly, if there is a magic weapon combat knife, it can be exchanged with the early stage of the third order, it can't be stronger. General Lu's eyes narrowed, and his smile was still amiable. You know Lu Shoshan? Quote, it's not him, the attribute is not, and the thickness of the cocoon at the mouth of the tiger is far from enough. This son is proficient in deathmatch, but he does not match the intelligence of the two suspects. The cultivation of shadow people is not into the flow, shadow system. The violent justice envoy is a superior battle chi attribute and a refined universal knife. But the age of the first generation of violent justice messengers is too old, and the age of the second generation of violent justice messengers is similar to him, but the opponent's tactics are more flexible, and the combat knives, firearms, rocket launchers, hidden killings, etc. have been mastered. The only intelligence close is that they are all upper-level battle chi attributes. However, there are many attributes of the upper battle chi, which can only be used as a reference. Lu Zhengguo's smile returned to natural, his eyes were kind, and he looked at Tang Gao with a smile, waiting for his answer. I know, it's my father at the same table, and the exercises I practice are still sent by Uncle Lu. Lu Zhengguo laughed and pulled Tang Gao to his side. Then we are a family, Lu Shoshan is my junior brother, you can be regarded as my junior nephew. Besides, if you take a knife, the little rookies on the side of the military formation are not enough for you to kill alone. You deserve to be number one. Quote, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.